Okay, we are here live at the Texas Pro. Coverage brought to you by High Tech Pharmaceuticals. I'm here with Mr. Harvey Shatan, 77-year-old IFBB professional. But what's extra interesting about him is he was the first man to judge both Ronnie Coleman and Branch at their very first contest here in Texas. So Harvey, let's start with the big man, 8-time Mr. Olympia, Ronnie Coleman. So what was that whole experience like?
Well, it was an interesting experience. I did not know Ronnie. Ronnie was a total unknown, and he entered the novice Mr. Texas contest. And when the curtain opened on the tall class, we had 6 competitors, and Ronnie stood out like a sore thumb. And I asked all my judges if anybody knew who he was, and nobody had ever heard of him. Nobody knew who he was. And I said, we got a winner here. We got Mr. Universe in the novice Mr. Texas. So I grabbed his entry form. He was listed at 5'10", 210 pounds.
Wow.
And I motioned for them to close the curtains. I was going to go backstage and find out who he was. And then Marvin Meinstein, who was the NPC promoter in Fort Worth, came running up and said, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" I said, "I want to know what we're doing with Mr. Universe in the AAU novice Mr. Texas." And he said, "His name is Ronnie Coleman. This is his first show. I'm getting him ready. In 2 weeks, he'll be doing the Lone Star Classic." So we went ahead and let it go on. He won the novice Mr. Texas, and he would have won the Open if he had competed in that. And I also judged him a second time. He entered a drug-free contest, Mr. Dallas Fort Worth. I tried to talk him out of it, and he wanted a trophy. And obviously he won that going away. He did not get, we were doing polygraphs, and he missed the polygraph. But he was legitimately drug-free. And I can tell you about that too if anybody's ever interested.
Yeah, do. That's something people harp on all the time. You can speak up a little too. They're asking. Nobody believes Ronnie was ever natural, like he was born out of the womb on steroids. But what is your
pro? Ronnie was a policeman in Arlington, Texas. I was an attorney, and I was representing the City of McKinney Police Department, and the chief of police was a power lifter. His best friend was the chief of police in Arlington. And we talked about Ronnie, and Ronnie was being vigorously tested at the Arlington Police Department, and he was clean all the way through. He got his pro card and used to come to our shows, and I used to talk to him about it. I said, "Ronnie, there's bad blood between National NPC and AAU. Are you sure you want to risk your card by coming here and helping us?" He would give away trophies. He would guest pose for nothing.
Wow.
In fact, I had the opportunity to go backstage and oil him up before one guest posing situation. And the man was just massive at that time. But he was drug-free until about 2 years into his pro card. And I know that, I want to say personal knowledge, but I have reputable knowledge of that.
I'm going to switch hands because I have a bad shoulder. Okay, so you also judged Branch right here in Texas at his first show, and what was he, like 16 or 17?
I think he was about 18 or 19. He weighed about 165 pounds.
Wow.
And he won the novice Mr. Not novice, but the teenage Mr. Texas. And then he subsequently went on and won the AAU Teenage Mr. America and the NPC Teenage National Championships, all in that 1 year.
Yeah. Now, I remember Branch telling me back then people said, "You'll never win the Mr. Texas. You'll never turn pro. You'll never amount to anything as a bodybuilder." When you saw him back as a teenager, what did you think of his potential?
He had all the potential in the world. I judged a lot of people in 10 years with the AAU, and the two that stood out the most as far as potential was Ronnie, obviously, and then Branch. And Branch just worked his tail off to really get to where he was. And Ronnie, of course, had the most God-given gifts I've ever seen on anybody. And I've judged other people that went on to be IFBB pros who would do our AAU shows. For example, Betty Parizo, and you know Betty. I judged Betty in a contest. She won the women's bodybuilding for me.
Wow.
In my show.
So you had the privilege of probably judging the best 3 bodybuilders to ever come out of Texas. Well, Leo Brada was also pretty good.
Yeah, I never did get to judge Lee. He stayed with the NPC.
Yeah. Wow, well, those are really cool stories. And you yourself, you're the oldest IFBB professional right now, you think?
At least in the state of Texas.
State of Texas. I believe there's an over 80 class now at the...
There is, but I'm the oldest active. I did not compete this year because I had 3 operations in January, and that knocked me out for the year, but I am still getting ready to compete. Next year I'm planning to go to Pittsburgh and compete in the over 70 IFBB Masters Mr. World.
Well, if that isn't a testimony to bodybuilding being the fountain of youth, I don't know what is, sir. Man, thank you so much for your time. Those are great stories. Appreciate it very much. Who's your pick for the win today, by the way?
Well, Steve Kuklo is a good friend of mine, and I'm hoping that, in fact, Steve and I, in 2019, when I was preparing for the North America, Steve was preparing for the Olympia, and he and I did our posing together quite a bit. And I'm hoping that he does well. He needs to get it together. Like you said in your telecast the other day, he's running out of opportunities.
Well, you know, the sport, no career goes on forever and ever. He's had a great run, but I want to see him on the Olympia stage. It's been a long time, and we need to see King Snake back up there.
Yes, we do.
All right, well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ron.
All right, thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next time.